Welcome back. Glad you're joining me for our last clip. As you know by now, stories are more than mere research anecdotes. They are the nervous system of our projects, connecting people and places through knowledge. So, how do we write and rewrite our stories and those of others coherently and fairly? This video will discuss the narrative arc of a story and the use of quotations and excerpts as embedded into research outcomes. For example, for a peer-reviewed article, a section of a PhD or master's thesis, a blog entry, etc. Today, we will focus on one of the stories we have discussed in the previous video installments. How can we incorporate a story into academic talks, introductions to our work, and written text? In order to do so, you will need to consider 4 important steps: ethical considerations, points of reflection, research language, and finally, a structure and flow. The story of the trash bag lost at sea is a good example of stories which can be incorporated into a conference talk, for example, to introduce a moment of reflexivity or to connect practices to the right meanings. Let's go step by step and see how we can incorporate the trash bag story into academic writing. First step, consider the ethical aspects before you start writing. What is the historical legacy of our disciplines and fields, our ways of designing research and inquiry and plans? How much do we consider the particular meanings contexts make? Can outcomes be made public? When necessary, how do you plan to anonymize those who have participated in your project? Writing research outcomes through stories can help tackle some of these ethical dilemmas. For example, a story can be private and easily recognizable for those familiar with our research context. In the stories I've told you throughout the clips, I've chosen to mention some of the names while I have also modified the background of other parts of the story. Step 2. Some stories have worked as points of reflection where a researcher turns the eye inward and questions her own biases in order to coherently modify her research inquiry and design. All stories represent different stages of reflexivity and positionality as we realize that our research projects are also about ourselves and our relationship with those we encounter during research. How to turn these experiences and reflections into a written, spoken narrative. Here are a few important points to consider before writing. Your story should not claim to represent people, their knowledges, places, and experiences. Your stories are part of your research journey, at times free-flowing, at times stuck in hazy notions. That is fine too. Always ask yourself, where in the research journey does this story belong? What does it say? What does it reflect about? What is the analytical value of this story? Besides questions of reflexivity, you must also question the actual language you're using. This brings us to step 3, research language. Something to remember as we digest stories which have affected us and transformed our research is that the more we zoom in, the more we get lost in our own way of telling the story. Including quotes, direct or indirect, from those involved in the story present its own challenges. Are we translating in between languages? How much do we translate in between epistemologies too? What is the power we hold when we translate people's words in and for our research? In storytelling research, we shouldn't aim or claim literal translations of people's words, if that is ever possible. In my research, I work with a few languages. For example, Manado Malay, Bahasa Indonesia, and Bahasa Sama. I then translate this research data into English. Let the sea take care of it. It's not a literal or direct quote of what was said in the trash bag story, but it is a quote which summarizes what was said and the main purpose of the story. To understand that for islanders, it is important to keep 9 island matters in the island and avoid showing dependency on the institutions of Manado, the capital of North Sulawesi. The sea is also the island, and the Bajo are often strategic in their dealings with nearby capitals and their local governments and institutions. Now that you have reconsidered all the connotations, challenges, and value of sharing research stories, let's talk about structure and flow, step 4. For each story, dedicate time to find your exposition, rise in action, crisis, climax, and fall in action. If you remember my story about the infamous trash bag lost at sea, You will also remember how it started with a description of the boat journey from Nine Island to Manado, and my lifestyle on the island as a Westerner researcher who had mostly lived in cities. That was the exposition. And its recent action stage, somebody asked me about the embarrassing bag, somebody else comes and takes it. Crisis ensues when the bag is thrown back at sea and somebody states, "Let the sea take care of it." In a mix of confusion and anger, driven by my own assumptions, we reach the climax of the story, our own biases at work. And action falls as I describe how months later a fisherwoman had told me about the fate of my trash bag back on the island to be burned. Here are two sources where you can read a bit more about narrative arcs for storytelling research. In today's clip, we have discussed how to incorporate stories as academic content by following steps where we consider ethical aspects of our research, reflect about our approaches, methodology, and perspectives, and critically review the very language of our research. Stories help us better understand our own research process and the challenges we face. At the same time, the stories we include in research outcomes can help us communicate the meanings of the context and our own research journeys more ethically. Telling and writing stories for research purposes is not easy, but reflecting upon their analytical value, structure, and purposes can help us understand the stories better, which is a rewarding experience. This video collection has approached stories collected through qualitative research and fieldwork as theoretical devices in their own right, and as strategies to decolonize research. Thank you for joining me in this venture of story-based research. Best of luck for your present and future research.